Yeah, hi peeps, it's Test Packnell Squat Box again, and the death of Margaret Thatcher and the troubles that still exist in the United Kingdom, the financial and social problems mostly, have got me thinking, and the problems in America. I mean, you've seen the problems in America, especially after the crash, and the inability for America to basically, with the tools at hand that it has, it's still politically unable to solve the problems that it's facing. And I see the same thing in Britain. We're basically politically unable to solve the social and financial problems of the countries that we live in, our politicians are. And I believe it's because they're not looking at the problems of our societies from the right perspective. They're looking at them from an ideological point of view, as if what they were taught as the right way to do things has got to be proven one way or the other that that is how it should work. That they're like theists, they're like apologetics, except they're apologising for the failures of their own political ideologies. They argue from the point of view of the way they see the world has got to be right, and they're not willing to actually sit down and ask themselves, what is the job I'm supposed to be doing as a politician? They basically spend a lot of time firefighting, taking one topic at a time, rather than trying to get an overview of the whole nation and the job that they're supposed to be doing for their nation. I mean, more so in America than in Britain, it actually tells them what their job is. It's written there, government of the people, for the people, by the people. But that's not what's happening in America. We don't have that stated in our country, but it is the job of the government. It's supposed to improve the life of all its citizens. That's basically the job that the politicians are there to do. Improve the life of every citizen in their country. Now, if all you're doing is making it good for a certain percentage and trying to make it not as bad for some others, and then basically deciding that there's a certain percentage you can never do anything about, and therefore you've just got to hand feed them the rest of their lives. And this is the thing that a lot of Conservatives hate and ideologically fight against. The idea that some people are inadequate compared to the rest of the nation, and therefore society and social society, social nations, the safety net needs to be big enough to capture all of them. And in conservative right-wing nations, they see it as, well, if they're not strong and fit enough for the environment they're living in, then we shouldn't help them. They should struggle and go without. The problem with that view is it causes a lot of social tension, social fracturing, it causes a lot of crime, and these are the things that some of the things that our governments are supposed to be dealing with. That is part of their job, is to deal with that and trying to negate that sort of thing as much as possible. I mean, we already live in a financially stratified and socially stratified society. Wherever you are in the world, you live in stratifications. There's always people at the top, people in the middle, and people at the bottom. But part of the job, I think, of the governments that we try and elect is we're trying to pick governments who will do the best they can for us, for me, as an individual, electorate, part of the electorate, the voter. I believe that I'm trying to vote for someone who understands and is going to do something for me in my position within the stratification of my society. I expect them to allow me to, if I get an opportunity, to climb that stratification into a higher stratosphere, it's a higher level. But if I have, you know, an illness or, you know, the misfortune to, you know, be robbed, or, you know, my house burns down, or, you know, something serious happens to me, and I drop from the level I'm in to a lower level, I expect them to help me stop that decline and give me an opportunity to climb back up to, if not where I started from, at least climb back up from below the poverty level. I don't see that it would be a hard job to do either if that was the aim of a government, to actually eradicate poverty. It would mean a redistribution of wealth. But isn't that what we elect them for? I mean, almost everything the government does is a redistribution of wealth. The fact that a lot of governments choose to redistribute their wealth upwards rather than deciding that it would make more sense to raise everybody out of poverty, if that means people who earn 10 million or £1 billion a year lose a big chunk of that in order for that to happen. It actually improves their lifestyle as well, because a lot of the ills and a lot of the tensions, a lot of the angst within the societies that the rich people live within as well, a lot of things that they end up arguing and discussing themselves, is caused simply because of the deprivation and poverty and the injustice within the society that they are part of. It should be part of their aim to eradicate that from society as well, because it's good for them. So it is, I think, beholden upon us to try and see politics not the way we see it today, where it's left, right, centre. Not to see it as, you know, socialist, conservative. You know, it's not like that. It's only like that if you're ideologically, you know, locked into that. As I said there, you know, I made an analogy between religions, you know. It's the ideology, it's the doctrine. I won't change my mind because this is the way I was educated, this is the way I was brought up, this is the way I was taught. Well, I was basically brought up socialist, but I'm not socialist. I'm socialist capitalist. I believe there is room in the world for capitalism. But I don't think that we should go to a totally capitalist free market, because that in its own way actually turns into well, for all intents and purposes, it turns into a totalitarian state. That's where you're going. You're going where the people at the top will rule and make the decisions for people who have got less access to power. Because in our capitalist societies, money is access to power. Maybe not power itself, although a lot of people make that mistake, but it does give you access to power. And in some way it allows you to manipulate and control that power for your own benefit, which puts other people at a disadvantage, especially those further down the economic stratification of our societies. But it is in their best interest to eradicate the lower levels of that stratification completely and bring everybody out of the poverty. Because the basic thing is, not everybody in life is the same. Some people would be happy to just have enough money to, you know, own a house, own a car, pay their bills, go to work, 9 to 5 every day, return home, put their kids through school, and not have to worry about falling into poverty because of some accident or mishap or disaster that strikes them, natural or otherwise. And some people wouldn't be happy with that. Some people would still go out and strive a bit more to raise themselves up, that stratification, to a place where they have 2 houses and a yacht and, you know, go on holidays around the world. And then there's people who aren't satisfied with that. There's people who need to feel that they are, you know, the top echelon, the moguls of our society. And there's some people who need to feel that they are in a position of power. I mean, I couldn't give a whiz. I've got no interest in wanting to be a politician and think that I'm running the country. But there's people who are mentally, that is their makeup, psychologically that is their makeup. They feel that they're made for that job. They're made to be decision makers, you know, the movers and groovers, you know. And so there is a place for almost everybody in a society. Some people are happy to be doing manual and you know, service jobs, you know, that sort of thing. They're quite happy there, and so long as they're being paid enough to live like a reasonable lifestyle, they are happy doing that for their whole life. You know, some people born into families like that won't be happy to do what their parents did, and they will rise up if the opportunities are there. And the only way that can be done is if governments turn around and say, well, there's no need for an individual to have £10 billion. There's absolutely no need, so we'll take some of that off you. What we'll do is we'll give you a marker. The government will take 8 of your 10 billion and we'll give you an £8 billion marker for it. And the government will use that money to, you know, increase the and to benefit the impoverished, to retrain, to retool factories, to rebuild infrastructure. And that in itself will make the whole nation wealthier, happier. That itself will reduce crime. Better hospitals will reduce illness. Better infrastructure will reduce the cost of moving stuff. And at any time, if that person has an accident and loses £1 billion on the market, he can say to the government, I've lost £1 billion, I'd like you to give me £1 billion of the £1 billion of my chitty. And the government says, yeah, there you go, there's £1 billion. Or he wants to open another factory up, or retool a factory. And he says to the government, I need money to retool my factories. I need money to retrain my workers because I'm changing from one aspect to another in my industry. And this could be done. If governments wanted to run a country like that, so that it benefits not just some but all, it could definitely be done. And I don't see how having a tax rate of 90% on some people, 60% on others, 10% on the lowest, I don't see how that would be a bad thing, especially if when you paid that money, the government says, you know, although we're taking huge chunks off you, there's a chitty. If ever you get into real difficulties with your corporation or your business, the government will bail you out. But the government's not going to wait for you to spend all the money that you haven't paid us and then bail you out with money that wasn't yours. It's a bit like the Mormons saving up their own blood in case they need an operation. You know, rich people, banks, they should save their money up, but they should save it up with the government, because the government doesn't lose it, the government keeps it. They hold on to it and they make really safe investments, basically the country, because so long as they don't privatise the country by selling it off to China or the Arabs, you know, the country's going to remain yours. It's just an idea that I had, you know. It might sound crazy. I don't know what you would call it in the political sense. Some people may try and compare it to communism, but it's not communism. It's a kind of capitalist social structure, I would say. Social capitalism, capitalist socialism, I don't know, you know, it's something like that, but it's about the closest form of true government for the people that I can think of, because it's for all the people. And I think there's a lot of work which has to be done to make it an effective means of government, but I think if governments were to sit down and really think about what their job is, it would probably cover a lot of what I've just said, you know, and it would would be something for them to work towards and strive towards. I mean, it's not going to be a utopia, but it would be a hell of a lot better than the situation that we have in the Western world, where we're going from fucking boom to bust every 10, 15 years, you know. Because whenever we did have a bust, the government would have the funds on hand that had already basically saved from the billion-dollar industries. They wouldn't be able to lose it themselves, but the money would be there for them to be put back into business if it fucked up. Allowing them to speculate and gamble with every penny they've got and more every day of the week until something disastrous happens and they lose all that money again, and then the government's got to start clawing back over the next 10 years or 15 years all the money they lost to bail them out and borrow it from other countries. If they didn't squander the money and the government had it as a stash, you know what I mean, took the money off of them, gave them a cheque for it, turned it into gold or diamonds and stored it in a fucking vault like Fort Knox, it would be something, you know. Anyway, just an idea, a thought. Swanshiva.